Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Comparing the Genealogy Giants. And thank you for having me remotely in Florida. I would rather be there than here on the shores of Lake Erie in Ohio. I'm sure it's warmer there than it is here. But we have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to keep us moving here. I've already been introduced, so there's a picture of my face, which you won't see in today's presentation, but that's who I am. And I'd like to start by framing this lecture because really, which one of the genealogy websites should I be using is the question that I probably get most often. There's now so many enormous genealogy websites out there that it can be a little bit confusing if you don't already know them, which one to use. And I tend to reframe that question when people ask me that. And here's the background for why. I'll say, no, I'd like you to reframe that idea for which genealogy website do you need right now? Because I promise you're going to need all of them probably at some point. So let me give you an analogy. Let's say that you are the grocery shopper in your family, and my thanks to a digital library from Queensland, Australia, for providing these awesome images of old grocery stores. Let's say you do the grocery shopping and you have several options in town of where to go. And let's say that you do a lot of your daily or weekly shopping at a very basic market with very reasonable prices, um, a lot of store label items, so off brands, but they're consistent quality, and you just need the basic goods for a reasonable price. But then there are a few things that you're a little more brand conscious about. So you might go across the street to a little bit nicer general store that has the brand of peanut butter you want or the specific kind of hosiery. But then even sometimes you're looking for a little more upscale shopping experience and some luxury items that you might not find at these stores. And that might take you downtown to a market like this, like a Scott's with an elevator with a doorman and somebody to help you carry your groceries. But even once in a while, Scott's with all of its luxury items wouldn't have something that you need for, say, to make your favorite stir fry recipe. And so you head across town to the Asian market. And that's where you finally find the little known good that you need that's the special secret ingredient for your stir fry. So as you can see, you may have one place that you go for your everyday shopping right now for where you are in life, but then you like to know what's out there for when you want to do a different kind of shopping or you're looking for a different experience or different kinds of goods. I feel that way about family history. You may have a real strong loyalty or preference for one particular site where you do a lot of your everyday researching. But the purpose of today's lecture is to introduce you in a more comprehensive way to each of these big four websites, is kind of how I think about them, so that you can know what's out there for each of these sites if you're looking for something a little bit different. You'll know that it's online and you have the option to use it. So when we start talking about what's available on these websites, we could quickly become a little overwhelmed. As you can see, there's a lot. I had to I got a little overwhelmed myself as I started preparing or conceptualizing this lecture a few years back. And I finally had to just take a deep breath and say, okay, what are the basics? What are the things that really will help me build my tree most effectively right now? So I decided to focus on a very few things. And when I talk about building your tree, I just want to remind you that even if somebody else has another favorite genealogy website, your tree is unique from theirs. So your ancestors, even for your siblings, may be different if you're half siblings. Your tree is definitely unique from anyone you're not related to with both parents. So there's going to be lots of things that might come up on your tree that might not on your buddies. And also, your trees change. Have you ever noticed that? You start doing a new line of research and you've been very comfortable working in this particular county in Pennsylvania or in Delaware or wherever you are, and suddenly things have changed a little bit. And you come up with an adoption puzzle, or you come up with German ancestors, and maybe the site that you're on doesn't have a lot of German records. Or you come up with some unknown identities, or you're not quite sure where to go on a new branch of the family. So things can change even if you think you already know your tree. So keep an open mind as I talk to you about these other sites, even if you already have a very strong brand loyalty to one or more of them, or you're kind of put off by one of them. Just keep in mind what they have. I'm going to tell you what they have to offer, because you may be able to get free access to the records you want or the features you want on these sites. I'll tell you some tricks for doing that. All of the sites have some kind of overlap. I'm going to show you examples, but it's really hard to do a full apples to apples comparison on these sites because they all show their records just a little bit differently. I'll show you some examples. And they all keep changing. They all keep publishing new record collections on the sites. They change their features. So it is really impossible almost to keep up with everything. This is a very high maintenance lecture to give. And I even was online updating a few things this morning since I'd given it a couple weeks ago. So remember that no single genealogy website probably has everything you're ever going to need. So keeping that in mind, you are going to have to venture past the virtual walls of your favorite places. Okay, so the 4 features I'm going to talk about today, and I will go through them. Hopefully I won't speak too fast, but I will go through them fairly rapidly. And I'm doing that knowing that you will have the video available to you on your website for 30 days. And I think it takes a couple times through this lecture to really get all of the principles that I'm teaching. So I do hope you'll go back and watch it again. We're going to compare historical records, trees, DNA, and cost or access. And the first thing we're going to talk about is historical records, because it's my favorite and it's the traditional heart of genealogical research. So historical records really provide all of the little tiny puzzle pieces that we need to put together a more complete view of our ancestors' lives. I wish that I could just give you a little table like this that says, well, how many historical records are on each website? But that's not so easy to do. And I think that as a genealogical society that's as savvy and well known as you are, I think I considered maybe taking away some of the detail here, but I think it will help you to better understand what's on these sites if I break this down for you and tell you how I came up with the numbers that I'm going to show you, because you'll see why. Okay, so first of all, there are different kinds of historical records and ways of counting them. So you have what I've shown you here on the top is you've got names that have been extracted from indexed records, and an index has been created, a database that you can search. So those are searchable names. That's a hard number that you can get hold of. Now, there's also scanned images of old print records like what you see below. And the sites have not gone through and counted every single name on those hundreds of thousands or millions of pages. And so they just are giving you some kind of estimate for how many names might appear on each of those pages. And they might give estimates in a different way. So when we start talking about how many historical records, there are different kinds of numbers to talk about. Only Family Search of these 4 actually separates those numbers out. Ancestry, Find My Past, and My Heritage includes them all together in a lump, just to make it easier for consumers to understand what their site has to offer. But as more advanced genealogists, I'm breaking it down a little further. You might hear Ancestry's 20 billion number floating around, but that's the total records of all kinds, trees, DNA, all kinds of things, is 20 billion. So when I'm talking just about historical records, they've got about half of that. So 10 billion names in indexed historical records, plus their estimated names, and they don't tell us how they estimate it, in any records that they have that are like print and scanned, but not indexed yet. So that's their figure. Family Search reports the lowest number of names in indexed records, but they separate out an additional more than 2 billion record images that are not yet searchable by name, that are on the site, and all of those have family names in them, and another 372,000 digitized books with who knows how many pages each and who knows how many names on each pages. So as you can see, that number should go up quite a bit. Find My Past and My Heritage, 9 billion range. My Heritage also includes in this total that they report, it does include all of the records on their site, not just the historical ones. So I actually have to adjust that myself. And I'm showing you that I am adjusting it. So that takes us down to about 6.4 billion records. Okay, so now I'm going to try to collapse this for you and give you more apples to apples comparison. Okay, let's say I'm going to combine the 2 billion images and the digital books. I'm going to estimate that there's one name per page on those 2 billion images, which is incredibly conservative, and that maybe there's 100 names in each of those books, which is also conservative, which brings me up to more like 8.4 billion names, putting me well within the ballpark of the leaders here. But again, that's a very conservative estimate. Now you get to the question of how you're estimating the number of names that are in those historical records that are not indexed yet. Ancestry doesn't tell us how they get their estimate. I told you how I was doing my family search estimate. Find My Past does say that they take a sampled average, so they do try to go in and look and see what a record type is providing in general and then give you the best number they can. And MyHeritage also plays it really conservative, just like the estimate I did with Family Search, at one name per image page. So that's what they tell us. So if we were to go by that, and again, these are different ways of averaging or estimating the number of names in these records, then I would probably take Family Search's number up and I would take MyHeritage's number up. And we don't know what to do about Ancestry, so we're just going to leave them there. Now the final problem is what counts as one record. Is a baby's birth certificate one record, as Family Search says, or is it 3 records, the mom and the dad and the baby, as Ancestry and MyHeritage say? Find My Past, I'm not quite sure. I've gotten some inconsistent readings from them of which way they do it, but I'll show you something that makes me think that they do it the same way Family Search does. So clearly, if they have the same database or the same record collection, then it's going to look 3 times as big over at Ancestry and MyHeritage. And you can see that those numbers could get really misleading really quickly. Neither of these is a bad way to report the numbers. They're just inconsistent. Okay, so here's an example. There's a lot of collections that are on all 4 websites, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But over at Family Search, which originated this particular collection of England births and baptisms, they set the number at 69 million records or so. And I've given you a screenshot from each of the collection catalogs for each of these sites so that you can see it for yourself. Now, the same collection over at Ancestry says it has 192 million records in it, nearly triple that amount. Find My Past reports a number very much closer to Family Search's, a little bit lower, meaning that maybe Family Search has added to theirs since they gave it to Find My Past. And do you see why I'm telling you this too? Is because there may be more updated records at some websites than others. And then when you go to MyHeritage, you'll see that its numbers are almost the same as Ancestry's. So you're also getting a report that is 3 times larger than Family Search's, even though Family Search gave them the collection. So as you can see, very different kinds of numbers. So how many historical records are on each one of these websites? I don't have a final count for you, but I think this is the best available comparative estimate out there, understanding that you'll probably need to go up for most of these websites on at least 1 or 2 different reasons, at least 1 or 2 ways. Okay, the good thing is that these numbers aren't everything, and I promise the lecture will get more interesting from here, unless you were a numbers person that probably put you to sleep. So please wake up and join us for the rest of the presentation, because now we're going to talk a little bit more about the types of records and their content. This is just my best sort of representation of the strengths of each of these sites globally. Ancestry and Family Search, absolutely the United States. But Ancestry has so many records for each of the states shown here, or I'm sorry, each of the countries shown here, that they actually provide country level subscription access to each of these countries. Yes, they do have lots of records from lots of other places, but they have so many from these that they provide their own country level package. So Family Search, I mentioned already for the US, but they have a unique kind of global reach. They're a nonprofit organization with a mission to help people from all over the world, whether or not they can pay, or whether or not they live in targeted market areas. They want them to be able to explore their family history, and they also reach into nations from around the world, doing volunteer archival projects to collect all their fragile and deteriorating records that they can get access to. So they have real unique strengths as far as Central and South American records, African records in several nations, and in emerging also are in nations of Asia too. So Family Search is the place to go for a kind of off the beaten path of those who are serving commercial markets, which is the other three. Find My Past really is a British Isles giant. It's known really for England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. But the reason that I include it in a comparison of global websites is because we all know the phrase that at some point the sun never set on the British Empire. So if you're scattered around the world in places that were colonized by the British Isles, the US, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, several places, then Find My Past wants to reach out to you as well. And they do have growing content for the US, for Australia, New Zealand, a little bit for Canada, especially for collections that will help you connect your ancestors, transitional immigrant ancestors from these places back to their homeland in England, Scotland, Ireland, or Wales. So My Heritage is, I kind of think of as the strong European giant. As far as because they have a history of being really strong for several of the nations of Europe, having family tree website for that, and then they started adding records a little bit later. So all the nations of Europe, Germany, especially the Scandinavian nations, they've been a real leader in reaching out to the Scandinavian communities and in those different language groups and regions to not only provide new records, but to reach them in their languages and through media and to collect their trees. So lots of great resources for the Scandinavian countries. Also, My Heritage is a country based in Israel, and they have a special place in their heart for Jewish research and records. So you'll find a real strength there for Jewish research on My Heritage. If I were to give you a map view, there's no way I can try to show you everything. But this comes from a table in a guide that I offer for sale. That's really a beefed up, expanded version of the free handout that I've given you. I'll tell you more about it at the end of the lecture if you're interested in buying it. But I want you to see this, is that there is lots of overlap for these sites and the places that they offer record content for. But then there's lots of places that are sort of little lesser known that maybe only one of the sites reaches out to in a really strong way. Okay, so as far as the overlap on each site, all of them have certain very basic publicly accessible record sets, such as the Social Security Death Index, for example, here in the United States. All of them link to or index content from collections that are not on their own websites. If you've ever researched on Ancestry, Family Search, Find My Past or My Heritage, you've probably noticed that some of your search results, they're like, what do you mean? You're sending me to Billion Graves or to Find a Grave to look for this? They'll index that information or point you to it, and then they'll send you off to that particular website to look at the full information. So that's another thing that all the sites do. Also, there are examples where Family Search or Ancestry will host an index just pointing you to full imaged records over at another site like Fold3. So Fold3 specializes in military records, and it is owned by Ancestry. And so Ancestry, of course, really wants to push you over there to Fold3 to look at the images, which you're not going to be available to you as an Ancestry user. And often there's way more that you want in an image record rather than just the index. And Family Search just wants to make sure you know about it so that if you want to go looking for it, you can get it. So I showed you that slide earlier that had one particular collection that's hosted at all 4 websites. Well, that particular that example is an example of Family Search partner data. So Family Search has partnerships with each of these 3 websites. Think of Family Search, since it's free and global and has this mission to promote family history research. Think of them as cheerleaders for the entire genealogical community in the world. And so they provide positive support, technologies, records, those kinds of things through strategic partnerships with each of these 3 sites. And so you'll see different things that show up on both sites. And one, for example, is this collection that I showed you of England births and baptisms, which is searchable on all 4 sites. So you will find on all 4 sites certain kinds of core genealogical records. I mentioned already the Social Security Death Index. But also you're going to see things like the federal censuses for the United States, at least the population schedules, and lots of vital records, even though from site to site in the US, the vital records collections will be different because there's no central civil registration. In the UK, you're going to find on all 4 of these sites all the England censuses up to 1911, and also enormous birth, marriage, and death indexes. There's a variety of those, and you'll find those on all 4 websites. So as you can see, there is a lot of overlap. That said, each of these sites has certain strengths in the kinds of records that they're most interested in, or that they've been really aggressive about getting on their sites. The first thing that comes to mind is Ancestry's unsurpassed collections of city directories. These are amazing year-by-year resources, really great for the United States and for other countries as well. And to this point, they've been pretty unique about getting large city directory collections online. Yearbooks is another one that comes to mind. Both Ancestry and MyHeritage have large yearbook collections. But then as you look down this list, you'll see that there's a couple things that are really core: censuses, and then vital records, and family histories, local histories, that are available on across all of these sites. Of course, you may find some differences in some of the collections. And then newspapers, Find My Past and MyHeritage really are the best at providing you access with digitized newspapers on the site, although Family Search is really good with indexed obituaries. So as you can see, there's some different kinds of record types that you might think of to go look for at different sites when you start looking for particular record type. So even though I said that US Census records are available on all 4 sites, let's look a little deeper into what US Census records mean, just to give you an example of the richness and the variety that might be on one site that you're missing out on because you're not looking. So all of us pretty much are familiar with this US Census population schedule, which is this is schedule number 1 for the US Census. But for many years, historically, special schedules were also taken on different types of topics that would have involved millions of our ancestors. So these special schedules in different categories, including mortality schedules, slave schedules, veteran schedules, those kinds of things, as far as online availability of those, if you break it down, this is kind of what it looks like. So as you can see, Ancestry is clearly the king of having the special censuses online. They have a lot available. Now, there are some things available at the other websites as well. But when it comes to these special schedules, I'm going to go to Ancestry to look for my ancestors in them, and I won't find them in most of the special schedules on the other websites. Okay, I could talk about records all day, but let's move on and talk a little bit about trees. So I'm going to approach this with a little caveat. User-submitted family trees are wonderful for the kinds of cousin connections you can make with other relatives that you didn't know were searching the same ancestors. It's so nice to hook up again with other branches of the family that you've lost touch with, or even other cousins that you knew about but didn't realize that they were into family history like you. This actually gives you someone to talk to who's just as enthusiastic as you are. And sometimes they can be good places to find, with these other cousins, to share your stories, share your pictures, because different stories and pictures and artifacts get handed down to different branches of the family. And sometimes different versions of those stories, which can be really interesting. But as far as research hints goes, that's the one area that I would caution you in. I tend to do all of my own research as far as I can go, and it's only when I'm stuck that I'll go look at somebody else's tree. And when I look at somebody else's tree, I'm not just looking at what they say, but what supporting evidence they're giving for what they say, because they may not know any more than I do. So as far as using user-submitted other people's trees for your own research, that's what I would say about that. So I just want to give you a little primer on the difference between building your tree at these different websites. On Ancestry and MyHeritage, every person there builds their own trees. You can build as many as you want. You can make them privacy protected so that other people won't see your trees, or you can make them public so other people can see your trees. You can build your own trees individually over at Find My Past as well, but they're not searchable yet. That feature is supposed to be coming, but it's not there yet. So there at Ancestry and MyHeritage, you can at least search other people's public trees. What's different is the global tree or a community tree or a unified family tree. There are several different names for this kind of tree over at Family Search. It's the same kind of tree structure that you find on Wikitree or Genie.com, which is a unified tree where you have many users, so you see those many trunks, but then you have one tree. And ideally, you're just all working on one open public tree that everybody contributes to. So instead of having different profiles on different scattered across different trees on these different websites on Ancestry and MyHeritage, if you're searching for your third great grandmother, she may show up in several places, some of which are privacy protected, and then you'd have to try to get access to all of those. Versus on Family Search, ideally, there would just be one public profile for that third great grandmother to which each person is contributing what they know. There may be a little bit of back and forth and disagreements, but that's the idea of having that kind of program, is that you have to submit evidence to back up what you say, which is very helpful. So what you are, it's all about control versus collaboration, and I actually do both. I participate in the Family Search Unified tree, but I also build my own trees over at these other websites for lots of different reasons. And sometimes it's about the kind of control I want over the research I'm doing, or the kind of privacy I want. Maybe I'm researching an adoptive line and I'm not ready to tell the biological relatives out there that I'm researching it. Or maybe I'm ready to collaborate and see what everybody else knows over on Family Search. So as far as how many profiles, ancestral profiles, are on these trees, Ancestry is the clear leader with just over 11 billion, I'm sorry. MyHeritage has quite a few. It's I think it's about 3.5 billion. That was my last update. Family Search is going to be surprisingly low. It's going to be down to 1.3 billion, I think. But of course, you're saying billion. So already 1.3 billion is a huge number, but relative to what you see over on Ancestry. Well, why would Family Search be so low if they're building this great big tree of the world? The idea is, of course, that you probably know yourself, and if we were in person, I would let somebody in the group answer this question, is that at Family Search, the idea is that you're merging all of those individual tree profiles so you don't have as much duplication, which is why the tree would, the overall number of tree profiles would be much lower. Okay, now everybody wants to know, well, who's going to have the trees that I want, that have my relatives on them? And the only way to know is to go looking. But I would give you two clues. And the first one is I would look at the global diversity of records offered by a particular website. If it offers a lot of records for that particular country that you're interested in and time period, it's going to attract more researchers who are going to be more active on the site in those parts of your tree. Also, you want to look at sites that support languages for the people who still live in those homeland areas. Certainly, if I have Swedish roots, I would love to learn from my Swedish distant cousins where the family homestead was. What are the old family stories and artifacts that remained intact or alive back in that hometown? And so I would love to connect with distant cousins that stayed in that ancestral homeland, particularly in that ancestral hometown. And so I would want to use a site that supports languages that would be spoken in those places. All right, we're going to talk only briefly about DNA. You've got plenty of lecturers who are professional level in DNA research. So I'm just going to talk about DNA as it relates to using these 4 websites. So just a very general introductory comparison. Why do your DNA? I don't need to get too much into that, but just as a reminder, because it helps you build your tree, a genetic cousin that you may not have known about before may have a different part of the tree fleshed out than you do, may know different stories than you do, may have different pictures. And if you haven't identified each other yet through traditional research methods and tree connections, then genetically is a good way to find them and to compare what you know. As far as DNA profiles, again, Ancestry wipes everybody out as far as numbers go. And the most recent numbers, Ancestry in, I think, the Thanksgiving Black Friday season of 2018, reported selling 14 million kits in their markets around the world. MyHeritage has passed 2 million. They also reported that recently. So you may have heard the news that Find My Past is now affiliated with Living DNA, which is a UK company. And so they're now selling DNA kits, and they are in the process of integrating that experience onto the site. You can buy your kit through Find My Past, but you can't really research. There's not a fully integrated way of researching your DNA connections through Find My Past yet. That's still limited over at Living DNA. And they do not publish their numbers, so I don't know what their numbers are. I double checked that again this morning, and they don't publish those. DNA is not a service that's available over Family Search, so they're absent from this comparison. So the cost of DNA testing, I can't even give you a good ballpark for because it changes every day. If you're watching online, you'll notice that test kit prices retail for about $89, sometimes $99 for autosomal testing, and which is what's offered at these particular companies. But DNA tests are priced separately from your subscription at one of these websites, so you do need to purchase it separately. They run tons of sales around every possible holiday, so watch for these prices to drop as low as $69, $59, even the very occasional $49. But to use all of the features of the DNA testing and matching experience at some of these websites do require a site subscription as well. So I think that your handout has a link to at least the details on that for Ancestry, because you do need to subscribe to Ancestry in order to get everything out that their DNA interface, the matching interface, has to offer. But a lot of features are going to be free with they're going to come with the cost of purchasing the DNA kit. As far as ethnicity results, okay, so two major things that you're going to get out of DNA testing. Ethnicity pie charts, which everybody loves as the cocktail party conversation and just to feel a stronger sense of ethnic identity, and then the matches, which I'll talk about in a second. So Ancestry DNA profiles more than 350 global regions, and they give you an interactive map that displays your geographic distribution. That's a similar kind of experience that you'll see over at MyHeritage DNA. They have 42 ethnicity categories from around the world. And they do have this sort of animated map reveal experience they blend some music with custom regions that show up in your heritage. But what I'd like to really point out here is, I said that these really are cocktail party conversation and not really something to hang your ethnic hat on completely. You can see how different these ethnicity estimates are. There's some things that are similar, but they are different. They're both mine. One was calculated by Ancestry and one was calculated by MyHeritage. So as you can see, there's still some disagreement, and we probably all know this already, that this is not something you take to the bank. As far as I do want to point out something really fun though. Living DNA gives you more detailed origins results for the British Isles than either of these other two companies. So Living DNA is affiliated with Find My Past, and I think this is why they've affiliated, is because Living DNA has this granular detail available in their tests, and Find My Past is all about the British Isles. So if you look, and I can zoom in even a little bit closer, but if you look at where they're telling me my DNA is from in the British Isles, that's the level of detail I get on each of these sites. I can't get any more out of Ancestry or MyHeritage than just this sort of line around that area. But at Find My Past or through Living DNA, on the Living DNA website, I can see down to even particular counties and particular parts of Scotland, and it's telling me only Northern Ireland, not all of Ireland. So you can see that there is a level of difference there for this particular part as far as ethnicity goes. So as far as the DNA matching tools, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but you can come back and study this slide yourself. Each of them gives you different tools for working with your matches. And this, like I said, I'm not a DNA expert. I'm not going to go deeply into this, but each of these tools can be really useful for one thing or another. And the tools do keep getting changed and updated a little bit. So this chart changes too. So this can be really helpful once you start getting into the finer tuning or the more advanced DNA match analysis that you do, is understanding the different tools that are on each site. Ancestry DNA is something that I like that's kind of fun, is their genetic communities that really shows you this picture that's taken from the genetic data that will say you have ancestors whose DNA is associated with this particular migratory group, and this is their story, and these are people who are on your tree who look like they fit the profile of this migratory community. At MyHeritage, one of the unique things they have is a chromosome browser, and you can compare the chromosome detail across several different relatives. All right, so let's talk about cost. Annual subscriptions at each of these places. Family Search is the only one that's completely, always, totally free. You do have to create a login, a free login. That's just your email address. And that's required because they have a lot of organizations, a lot of records custodians, archives, libraries that provide their record images available online through Family Search. And one of the things they request is to gather a little bit of information about who's accessing them. So that's not something that they share your email address with them, but they just get a total number of people who are logging in. They just gather a little bit more information about the use of these records. So at the other sites, you'll find the same kind of login is required, but you're going to have to shell out some bucks along with it. So Ancestry.com used to be the most expensive, but MyHeritage has the distinction of catching up with them. So now a basic access at Ancestry.com, and that means just country level, like the U.S. records that I showed you earlier, or the Mexico records. That's going to be about $200 a year. And then all access in U.S. dollars, all access to the global records collections on the site is $300. So this is kind of comparable to MyHeritage, the $300 for the year for all access, but MyHeritage breaks theirs down a little bit differently. Instead of offering you access by country, they offer you access. You can pay $129 to get a premium website, family website, where you can build a large tree, share it with your relatives, and have a sort of a social media / family tree experience with your family in the privacy of your own family website. They don't have to subscribe. Your subscription is enough, but you can give them access. And then $189 is if you purchase access to the historical records on the site. So you can choose one or the other. And some people like that, and some people don't really get that, what they're offering there. But that's how they break down their subscriptions at MyHeritage. At Find My Past, they do offer the country level, again, the same way Ancestry does, which is $129. Or you can purchase pay-as-you-go credits. If you just want access to a few records now and then on Find My Past, or you just want to explore a little bit, you can buy credits and then do your searches, and it will say if you want to fully view this record that looks like it's your relative, it will cost you 5 credits, but you will have permanent access to it with your login. And that's your free login. So you can do this a la carte type of option at Find My Past, which none of the other sites have. Or you can pay the $180 or so to get full access to the entire site. So lots of information to take in there. MyHeritage does offer first-time subscriber discounts, and all of the sites sometimes offer sales. So if you just get on their mailing list, their email list, sometimes you will, as a free user, when you sign up to use the site, then you may receive now and then offers to join the site for up to 50% off for the year. So that doesn't come from Ancestry, but you'll find them for the other sites every once in a while. So keep that in mind too. Okay, so if you don't want to shell out those kind of bucks to access these amazing records on the site, I don't blame you, even though I sure enjoy accessing them from home. You can visit a nearby library. This is my public library. I live in Euclid, Ohio. And here in my library, we do have in-library access to Ancestry Library Edition. So I have to go there to use it. But it is available to me. And a lot of public library systems have these kinds of resources available. Just find out which ones they have. There are some limitations to library editions. They don't always include every single record collection, although they include a lot of them. For example, over at Find My Past, they don't include the newspaper access. But that may be available through the British Newspaper Archive anyway. So they kind of break that down that way. The major limitation I find on the library editions is that you can't log in to use your own tree. So if you're building a tree on that particular website and then you go to the library to use it, you're not able to log in. So when you do the record research, you can't attach them to your ancestor's profile on your tree. That's just a matter of convenience. You can still save those records. You can email them to yourself, download them and take them home with you, transcribe all the information into your own family tree software or tree service, whatever you're using. But that is an inconvenience, but hey, it becomes free to search. So that's really helpful. The other option is to visit one of the family history centers, which are satellites to the big family history library in Salt Lake City. Family history centers are run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but you'll also sometimes find Family History Center affiliated libraries within larger public libraries or other research libraries. So I think that the handout has a link for you to find the nearest Family History Center near you. This does offer you the ability to log into all 4 of the websites I'm talking about today. Of course, Family Search is free, but they give you more access to more records even at the family history centers. So this can be a really great option because you'll know all 4 of them are there, plus lots of others that I haven't even touched on today. The only difficulty is that they do have limited hours. They're staffed entirely by volunteers, which is great, and I appreciate them, but most of the centers have limited hours. So you're going to want to do a little research and make sure they're really there before you go visit them. Okay, so let's do some quick site highlights. Now that I've walked you through that, that can be a little bit overwhelming if you're stopping to think, wait a minute, which site was it that had this? Which one do I want to use? So now I'm going to go site by site. I'm going to cluster it that way for you so that mentally you can come away with a sense, oh yes, this is the website that I wanted to look at next, or this is what I'm going to push to the back of my mind for right now because I don't need it. So let's do some site highlights. I'll start by saying that all 4 of them are amazing. They offer powerful, flexible search interfaces that are specific to the way a genealogist wants to research. It's much more specific than, say, Googling it because they recognize first and last names and the different name spelling varieties. They recognize dates and date ranges in a very specific way. So once you get into these sites, they really are powerful and made for genealogists. If you have a tree on the site, they all have automated record hinting. The record hinting service over at Find My Past is not quite as advanced yet. It's a little bit younger and a little bit more limited, but it's growing. It's doing some good things. So all of them offer some kind of help or tutorials to show you how to use the site. And then some of them offer more than that too, to teach you how to be a better genealogical researcher, whether you're on their site or not. So that said, the things about Ancestry that I love and the things that I think you should know that may be positive or maybe not. So as far as the site highlights for me, I'm all about historical records. I really am. I love the DNA too, but historical records, wow, deep and a lot of exclusive US record content. I already mentioned those city directories. I've already mentioned those US special census schedules. They also have a sort of a beefed up version of the Social Security Death Index that at least as of now is only available on Ancestry, the Social Security Applications and Claims Index, which provides things like parents' names for an additional nearly 50 million people. They do offer the very biggest integration of DNA and family trees, lots of great tools for working with your matches. They've got a lot of great free online tutorials for how to become a better researcher. They've got Family Tree Maker software, which is a really great software that syncs with their site. And they do have a free mobile app that a lot of people like to use so they can consult their tree when they're on the go. You should know that it is relatively expensive. So that's it, and MyHeritage are the expensive ones. They don't really have much in the way of newspaper content because they have newspapers.com. And so they send you over there to research in newspapers. And the Family Tree Maker software that I mentioned is a separate purchase. It's not free. So Family Search, see, I told you it would be quick. Family Search, the things that I love, the things that I think you should know. I love that at Family Search, you'll always know that everything is free. I love that they prioritize the core genealogical records. So you know what, they may not have all those directories and yearbooks and things like that, but they're going to have the things that you most want for regions of the world that probably other people are ignoring. So they've got some great core genealogical records, those birth, marriage, death records, census records, any kind of civil and church registrations you're going to find over at Family Search. Family Search also has an awesome wiki, and the wiki is really the Wikipedia of genealogy. It has all kinds of thousands of online tutorials, language lessons, directories of available records. Anytime you want to learn about researching a new type of record or researching in a new language, researching in a new place, down to sometimes the county or town level, there might be a wiki article in the Family Search wiki to tell you more about that. It's all user contributed, so some pages are more updated than others and some are more accurate than others, but it's a great place when you're getting started in a new skill set and you need to learn some things. The Family Search catalog is also unique to these sites because the Family Search think of Family Search as the online presence of the enormous family history library in Salt Lake City. So a lot of the digitized records from the family history library show up on Family Search, But what also shows up on Family Search are the records that haven't been digitized yet or made fully indexed on the site. And these are available in the form of a catalog. So the Family Search catalog is what you want to search when you're looking for things that you haven't found in the digitized records. And you're like, well, okay, maybe it's not digitized and indexed yet, but I want to know about it so that I could go find it either at the Family History Library or maybe at a library near me. So that catalog is just a fantastic and a very little known resource. They do have mobile apps that are great, and they do have a service that helps you give back to the genealogical community. They run, it's not the only indexing program in the big genealogy community, but it's a really fabulous one, the Family Search Indexing Program. You can help index old records from the comfort of your own home, and you can participate in that unified or community-based tree. So these are two ways to contribute what you know. So you should know, a lot of people feel like their community tree format has some pluses, has some minuses. It just depends on how you feel about collaborating. They don't have the DNA testing or tools. They're not strong for newspapers, directories, yearbooks. They do have tons of digital books, and those are mostly local histories and family histories. They don't have their own software for you to keep your tree in separately offline, but they do sync with Roots Magic and with several other software that it makes it kind of easy to work with them. And the site really is packed with information, but you do have to dig around in different screens to find it all. There's no one unified search box where you can search both printed records that the computer is scanning for you through optical character recognition and index names. You have to do that separately. And it's good to know, and once you learn it, you can adjust for that. It's free. It's worth it. So Find My Past, the things that I love about them, the things that I think you should know. I love, love, love their deep coverage for England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. They're the first place I go when I'm looking for somebody in those countries. And as you can see, my roots send me back there a lot. I'm very excited about the Living DNA partnership because I think it's going to give us a lot more detailed information on these very fascinating British Isles, which we have I've always referred to myself as a British Isles mutt, and I'm starting to tease apart some of those identities a little bit. Which is very exciting for me. I love that they have tons of Irish records from before the famine. So it's a great place to go if you're looking for doing Irish research. Catholic records are traditionally not super easy to access in the United States and in England. Sometimes they're available and sometimes they're not. And there are now digitized Catholic record collections for several dioceses and archdioceses in the US and England that have been made available through Find My Past. Find My Past has access to amazing digitized newspapers. For the US, they offer access to newspaper archives, which is a standalone thing that you can search at your local library, but you can also search it through your Find My Past subscription. And I found a lot of things on my relatives, even recent ones, even my own birth announcement in digitized newspapers and Find My Past. PERSI, or the Periodical Source Index, is worth an entire lecture of its own, but it is an index to thousands of genealogy and historical periodicals that might have articles that tell you more about your family history. Find My Past has some great tutorials, and they're free, and it is the only site that has that pay-as-you-go a la carte access that some people might really love. If they just need those Catholic records or they just are interested in searching PERSI, that's a great option for you. So the things to know about Find My Past: you can build your tree there, but you can't search other people's trees yet or share yours widely. You can share it with individuals one at a time through email, but you can't search other people's trees yet. It does have that, they mean it. Their geographic focus is on the UK, is on the former British Empire, the British Isles, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and then the colonial areas. Their automated record hinting I mentioned earlier is the most limited, and they don't have a desktop software that's specialized to sync with them. Of course, you can upload your tree or download it, but there's not a particular one specific to Find My Past. Over at MyHeritage, the things I love the geographic diversity. I love those cousin connections you can make, especially in Europe, or especially for Jewish roots, especially for the places that they do well. They do offer a free version of their family website that I mentioned earlier that you can use for tree building and social networking that all kind of happens in the same environment, which is great to invite your family's members to post a picture of you and grandma and your kid, and then tag each family member, including the deceased grandma, in these pictures on MyHeritage, and that tagging it will attach that picture to grandma's profile on the tree and to each of your profiles on the tree, which is kind of cool. They do have fantastic searching and hinting technologies. They're really, really good at tech tools. They're strong, they're accurate, they translate across many languages. Often if I'm having trouble finding a record that I'm searching for that I think is probably on more than one of these sites, I'll go look for it using MyHeritage because their search engine is so good. They do have some unique DNA matching tools, including that chromosome browser. I didn't notice this. You can upload your DNA for free from other sites, but you don't get full access. I wanted to modify this slide and I forgot to. You don't get the full access that you would have if you had done it before December 1st of last year. So that's kind of a good thing and not quite as good as it used to be. They do have their own free desktop software, Family Tree Builder, and they do have a good mobile app that's also free. It is expensive now. It's as expensive as Ancestry is now. And their record coverage, I find their historical record coverage for a lot of areas is not quite as strong or as unique as I would like to see. They've got a lot of duplication that other sites have, but for the areas that I spoke of, particularly for the Scandinavian countries, they've got some really great collections. They don't have a lot of free online tutorials to teach you how to become a better researcher. And their subscription options are a little bit different than most people are used to, which can be a little bit off-putting, but unless it's something that you really want, in which case this is a plus. Their desktop software is built to sync with myheritage.com, so you can keep your tree on the site and enjoy attaching records to it without having to then copy them over into your software later on to keep everything current, but it's not going to sync to other sites as well. Okay, so bottom line, keep all 4 of these sites in mind as you search, because as you can see, I've given you lots of reasons why one might be worth your attention that it hasn't been previously. So this is not in your handout because the answers can change, but it's the 30-second elevator questions. I'm in the elevator and someone asks me they find out what I do. They say, where would I go to learn my genealogy, do my genealogy for free? I'd say start at Family Search. If they say, I want to take a DNA test, where should I take it? I'd probably say, if you're looking for cousin connections, start with Ancestry because they offer the most of them, and then upload your DNA to MyHeritage. If they say, I just want to know the old stories, and a lot of those stories are in newspapers, I'd start at Find My Past for the US, for the British Isles, for Ireland. If they said, well, I just want a place to put all my research, to share it all with my relatives, I'd say do it at MyHeritage. And if there's just saying, I just want to dig for all kinds of records about my ancestors, and that really, as we all know, depends on when they were, where they were, and all kinds of factors. For an in-depth comparison, as if you didn't think this hour's worth of lecture was in-depth enough and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, my Genealogy Giants guide comparing the 4 major websites, it's only $10 and it's available on genealogygems.com. Really easy to find, but it tells you what you can do for free at each of these sites. It gives you that comparison table of historical record coverage for more than 30 countries. It's just like a 1 or 2 star thing. It explains a little bit more about your privacy options and backup options and things like that, working on the different sites. You get a better, richer DNA comparison, some great pros and cons, and some more detailed subscription cost comparison. So that's something that I recommend, although the subscription cost comparison is going to be most current in this lecture today. So if you do get the guide, also maybe copy down the information from that slide. Okay, I'm going to stop talking for just a minute and let you do the talking now. What questions do you have for me?